Namaste. Aloha. My name is Janapati Das. Welcome to the Srimad Bhagavatam class. I apologize. My phone ran out of space, and so my video was cut off last time. So I apologize if I was in mid conversation and cut off. We're going to continue from Canto 1, Chapter 1, Verse 1, and we're on the purport. So please accept my respects, everyone. Please let me offer my obeisances to my spiritual master and to Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And of course, also today is the appearance day of Srila Narottam Das Thakur, a great Vaishnava saint in our Gaudiya Sampradaya spiritual lineage. And so we offer respects to him. And let's chant a little bit. Namasita Swarupananda Paramahamsa Namine Gaurakaruna Swarupaya Radha Krishna Krishnayate Namasita Swarupananda Jaya Jaya Guru Jaya Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Haribol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I was born in the darkness, ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. So, we're going to continue where we left off, but I'll read through the translation of text 1 again. It's very wonderful, very jam-packed, full of wonderful descriptions in this first verse. Basically encapsulates all of Srimad Bhagavatam in this first verse. O my Lord, Sri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my obeisances, respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Sri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion as one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen in fire or land seen on water. Only because of him do the material universes temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Sri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. So we were discussing about the philosophical natural tendency of the living entity to ponder, to inquire, because of in the form of the human form of life, we have this capability. So when Bhaktivedanta Swami says it's natural that a philosophical mind wants to know about the origin of the creation, not just the origin of the creation, but the origin of ourselves too, because such inquiries are natural for man because man has a developed consciousness which is higher than that of the animals. The author of Srimad Bhagavatam gives a direct answer to such inquiries. He says that the Lord Sri Krishna is the origin of all creations. He is not only the creator of the universe, but the destroyer as well. The manifested cosmic nature is created at a certain period by the will of the Lord. It is maintained for some time, and then it is annihilated by his will. Therefore, the supreme will is behind all cosmic activities. Of course, there are atheists of various categories who do not believe in a creator, but that is due to a poor fund of knowledge. And also, as we've been reading in the Bhagavad Gita, the enviousness of the living entity towards Sri Krishna makes it so, or actually blocks the ability of the living entity to know Krishna, because this is what they desire. The modern scientist, for example, has created space satellites, and by some arrangement or other, these satellites are thrown into outer space to fly for some time at the control of the scientist who is far away. Similarly, all the universes with innumerable stars and planets are controlled by the intelligence of the personality of Godhead. In the Vedic literatures, it is said that the absolute truth, personality of Godhead, is the chief amongst all living personalities. All living beings, beginning from the first created being, Brahma, down to the smallest ant, are individual living beings. And above Brahma, there are even other living beings with individual capacities, and the personality of Godhead is also a similar living being. The supreme personality of Godhead, though. Source of all the living beings. But the Supreme Lord, and he is an individual as are other living beings, but the Supreme Lord, or the Supreme Living Being, has the greatest intelligence, and he possesses most inconceivable energies of all different varieties. So it's very hard for atheists to wrap their head around this because of their enviousness. They tend to think of God as being some other personality that's like them. So if I can't do these things, how is it possible for someone to maintain all the universes and all the different with his different energies? How does that work? You can't wrap the atheist as the devotee of Krishna just accepts that. We don't have to well, how is that? Speculate about it or whatever. If a man's brain can produce a space satellite, one can very easily imagine how brains higher than man can produce similarly wonderful things which are far superior. So similarly, in kind of a crude example, relatively, like an ant, has certain capabilities from where its existence in space, if an ant were, I don't know, 500,000 times larger than what it is, it would be monstrous and could crush humans, right? But it's so small, so we can step on ants, we can throw water on ants, we can create havoc for ant colonies, because they're so small compared to us. So that's similarly, what even more to compare ourselves to demigods or to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who has all inconceivable potencies. But the concept is not difficult to understand, but the intelligence is marred by enviousness of the atheist. The reasonable person will easily accept this argument, but there are stubborn atheists who would never agree. It's just enviousness. They don't want to accept the fact that there is anybody more powerful than they are. That's just the bottom line. Srila Vyasadeva, however, at once accepts the supreme intelligence as the Parameshvara, the supreme controller, that's Shvara. He offers his respectful obeisances unto the supreme intelligence addressed as the Para, or the Parameshvara, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that Parameshvara is Sri Krishna, as admitted in Bhagavad Gita and other scriptures delivered by Srila Vyasadeva, and specifically in this Srimad Bhagavatam. So the Bhagavad Gita was another scripture that was written down as part of the Mahabharata by Srila Vyasadeva. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that there is no other para tattva summum bonum. Summum bonum is, Bhaktivedanta. English was his second language, but he's using Latin here. So that's the ultimate, right? Summum bonum, or the para tattva, the supreme absolute truth, than himself. There is no para tattva, nothing greater, in other words, than himself. Therefore, Sri Vyasadeva at once worships the para tattva, Sri Krishna, whose transcendental activities are described in the 10th canto. And one of the little tweaky mind games that atheists love to play is they like to do the cause and effect. And you can, ultimately kind of do this cause and effect. You can find something that happens and you trace back what caused that. You eventually will get to God. And then the atheist says, well, who caused God? And we just say, no one caused God. God is all existent. And then they just can't understand that. Unscrupulous persons go immediately to the 10th canto, and especially to the 5 chapters which describe the Lord's rasa dance. This portion of the Srimad Bhagavatam is the most confidential part of this great literature. Unless one is thoroughly accomplished in the transcendental knowledge of the Lord, one is sure to misunderstand the Lord's worshipful transcendental pastimes called the rasa dance and his love affairs with the gopis. His subject matter is highly spiritual, and only the liberated persons who have gradually attained to the stage of Paramahamsas can transcendentally relish this rasa dance. So there are people who actually will imitate, I'm trying to think of the name of them, what Bhaktivedanta calls them, but there are people who will imitate the parts in rasa dance. Someone will be Krishna and someone will be, so that gives them an excuse to, they say, oh, we're doing the rasa dance, we're living out, you know, and they're just engaging in sexual activities. And sometimes it's men who do this, who play the parts, and it's a sexual thing. So it's not, this is like completely horrible and offensive way of approaching the rasa dance, which is purely spiritual. The subject matter is highly spiritual, and only liberated persons who have gradually attained to the stage of Paramahamsa can transcendently relish this rasa dance. Srila Vyasadeva therefore gives the reader the chance to gradually develop spiritual realization before actually relishing the essence of the pastimes of the Lord. Therefore, he purposefully invokes a Gayatri mantra, Dhimahi. This Gayatri mantra is meant for spiritually advanced people. When one is successful in chanting the Gayatri mantra, he can enter into the transcendental position of the Lord. That's interesting. I wonder if that word Dhimahi is in this first. No, it's just part of the Gayatri mantra. One must therefore acquire Brahminical qualities or be perfectly situated in the quality of goodness in order to chant the Gayatri mantra successfully and then attain to the stage of transcendentally realizing the Lord, his name, his fame, his qualities, and so on. Interesting. I didn't know that. Srimad Bhagavatam is the narration of the Swarup of the Lord manifested by his internal potency. This potency is distinguished from the external potency which has manifested the cosmic world and which is within our experience. Srila Vyasadeva makes a clear distinction between the two in this shloka. Okay, verse, right? Sri Vyasadeva says herein that the manifested internal potency is real, whereas the external manifested energy in the form of material existence is only temporary and illusory, like a mirage in the desert. In the desert mirage, there is no actual water. There is only the appearance of water. Real water is somewhere else. The manifested cosmic creation appears as reality, but in reality, of which this is but a shadow, is in the spiritual world. So, really interesting. So, yeah, we've talked about this before, where there's a differentiation. Sometimes people, Buddhists and whatnot, will call this world as illusory, as being like dreamlike or not real. It is very real because it's Krishna's energies, and we are experiencing it. What makes it temporary and illusory? It's a temporariness and illusory, like a mirage in the desert. So when you're looking for water, you're looking for some happiness in the desert, and you're in a desert, you have this illusion of seeing something that will satisfy your thirst, right? But it's not really there. You can wander, you can go into it and follow it and go through it, and really, but the reality is this world is like a desert, as Tusta Krishnadas said, and this is Tusta Krishnadas's my dear god brother and pure devotee of Krishna, who left the world some 25 years ago, wrote a wonderful poem where he explained that, he said, the material world is a desert, and the devotee of Krishna, Srila Prabhupada, reveals this as it being a desert, but this is illusion of being what is this, like what do they call those? Oasis, right? An oasis is a real thing, but this is an illusion, like the mirage in the desert. So, so the real water is somewhere else. The real water is in the oasis, in the real oasis. But we are seeing these mirages of potential enjoyment, and we keep following them, thinking that, oh, that's going to satisfy me. We're just going out into the desert and dying of thirst. So this is a beautiful analogy by Bhaktivedanta Swami. The manifested cosmic creation appears as reality, but reality of which this is but a shadow is in the, but reality is in the spiritual world, right? The real Satchidananda Vigraha, you know, where our spiritual form of eternal bliss and full of knowledge is in the spiritual world of Krishna's abode, Krishna Dhamma, Vrindavan Dhamma. Absolute truth is in the spiritual sky, not the material sky. In the material sky, everything is relative truth. That is to say, one truth depends on something else. This cosmic creation results from interaction of the three modes of nature, goodness, passion, ignorance, and the temporary manifestations are so created as to present an illusion of reality to the bewildered mind of the conditioned soul, who appears in so many species of life, including the higher demigods like Brahma, Indra, Chandra, and so on. So there is also an illusion of this like role we're playing, that this is me. I'm Janapati Das, and I'm a white male American. I'm 56 years old, and I'm 5'9.5", and I live in Hawaii, and I'm this reality, which is real in a certain temporary sense, but in an eternal sense, this is not my spiritual form. This has nothing to do with me, really. None of it does. And so the three modes of nature interact with the desires of the living entity to own and control things in the matter for potential happiness. And the manifestations are created by Maya Devi to keep us in the material world, or hopefully, if we have some intelligence, then to lead us out. This all depends on where, and why, what we really want in our heart. Do we want to stay in this material world? Do we not find any happiness in this material world? Then we want to go home to Krishna. There appears, actually there's no reality in the manifested world. There appears to be reality because of the true reality which exists in the spiritual world, where this personality of Godhead eternally exists with its transcendental paraphernalia. So everything is a perverted reflection of the reality in the spiritual world. The chief engineer of a complicated construction does not personally take part in the construction, but he knows every nook and corner because everything is done under his direction. He knows everything about the construction, both directly and indirectly. Similarly, the personality of Godhead, who is the supreme engineer of this cosmic creation, knows every nook and corner, although affairs are being carried out by demigods. Beginning from Brahma down to the insignificant ant. I love that. I think I want to write a song called From Brahma Down to the Insignificant Ant. That would be a great song title. Bhaktivedanta loves to refer to that as all the living beings. But no one is independent in the material creation. The hand of the Lord is seen everywhere. All material elements as well as all spiritual sparks emanate from him only. And whatever is created in this material world is but the interaction of two energies, the material and the spiritual. So there are two energies. So this is when the father of DNA, Francis Crick, could not find the self in any of his studies, and came to the conclusion that even though that he could not find a concept of a self in the material energy, which he saw as all in all, so therefore he concluded there was no self, like a Buddhist, There's no self. Nobody's home. Instead of using your intelligence a little bit and saying, okay, well, obviously there's some awareness going on, and that if there's no location for where consciousness arises, or what consciousness is, and ever proven or found out from material science, there is no proof of what consciousness is. They have nothing on that. So therefore you can deduct from that kind of thinking, logical thinking, that there must be another energy, and that other energy is spiritual in essence and is not affected by material energy, And in fact, actually, material energy is created by spiritual energy. So that's the conclusion we come up with. So material and spiritual, which emanates from the absolute truth, the personality of God as Sri Krishna. So there are two energies, and they both emanate from the source of that energy. All energy has a source, except for Krishna. Krishna is the ultimate source, but who has no source above him. A chemist can manufacture water in the chemical laboratory by mixing hydrogen and oxygen. So also another point in that, to conclude that, the meaning of the absolute truth is that there is nothing beyond it. So when you refer to God as being the absolute truth, or the personality of Godhead being the absolute truth, there is no way to say, but who created him? Because then he wouldn't be an absolute truth, right? There would be no absolute truth. If we just kept going down that, okay, but it was this other person that created Krishna and somebody else created him, and on and on. It's just an infinite, and there is actually no source, which is contradictory to logic. So the chemist can manufacture water in the chemical laboratory by mixing hydrogen and oxygen, but in reality, the living entity works in the laboratory under the direction of the Supreme Lord, and the materials with which he works are also supplied by the Lord. So even though we have the capability of creating so many amazing things we don't have the ability of creating new elements. We utilize what is already provided by us by Krishna. The Lord knows everything directly and indirectly, and he is cognizant of all minute details, and he is fully independent. He is compared to a mine of gold, and the cosmic creations in so many different forms are compared to objects made from the gold, such as gold rings, necklaces, and so on. Very nice analogy. So God is the mine of gold, and from that all the energy is created into different things like rings, necklaces, skyscrapers, planes, whatever, vaccines, whatever men come up with, create, they're borrowing from other things that God has provided, like a gold mine. The gold ring and the gold necklace are qualitatively one with the gold in the mine, but quantitatively the gold in mine is different. Therefore, the absolute truth is simultaneously one and different. So Krishna is the source of all energies and all of his energies, but he is also separate from it. Nothing is absolutely equal with the absolute truth, but at the same time, nothing is independent of the absolute truth. So similarly, the energy of a CEO, we use that example that's been used before. The CEO is not actively present in all of his energies, maybe stores or subdivisions of chain of command, but his policies determine that. So he's always involved. If he knows that store A, B is doing something that is contrary to what he laid down, then he will correct that. But he is. That's not to say that God is this. The CEO is the store A, B, and also the CEO. It's different. Nothing is absolutely equal with the absolute truth, but at the same time, nothing is independent of the absolute truth. Conditioned souls beginning from Brahma, who engineers the entire universe down to the insignificant ant, there's that saying again, are all creating, but none of them are independent of the Supreme Lord. The materialist wrongly thinks that there is no creator other than his own self. That's what the atheist is like. I've done this, I do this is my creation, I did it myself. This is called Maya, or illusion, because his poor fund of knowledge, the materialist cannot see beyond the purview of his imperfect senses, and thus he thinks that matter automatically takes its own shape without the aid of a superior intelligence. This is refuted in this shloka by Srila Vyasadeva. Since the complete whole or the absolute truth is the source of everything, nothing can be independent of the body of the absolute truth. Whatever happens to the body quickly becomes known to the embodied. Similarly, the creation is the body of the absolute whole. Therefore, the absolute knows everything directly and indirectly that happens in the creation. In the Shruti mantra, it is also stated that the absolute whole, or Brahman, is the ultimate source of everything. Everything emanates from him, and everything is maintained by him, and at the end everything enters into him. That is the law of nature. In the Smriti mantra, it is the same is confirmed. It is said that the source from which everything emanates at the beginning of Brahma's millennium to the reservoir, in the reservoir to which everything ultimately enters is the absolute truth, or Brahman. Material scientists take it for granted that the ultimate source of the planetary system is the sun, but they are unable to explain the source of the sun. Herein, the ultimate source is explained. According to the Vedic literatures, Brahma, who may be compared to the sun, is not the ultimate creator. It is stated in the shloka that Brahma was taught Vedic knowledge by the personality of Godhead. So we know this kind of the creation of the universe. Brahma wakes up into darkness and doesn't know where he is, and he tries to go down this stem of the lotus and it just goes on and on and on and on and never ends. And he just goes back up and he starts to meditate. And from there, he is able to have the absolute truth transmitted to him. And this is the way of the spiritual master to the disciple. So Lord Brahma received this absolute truth from Sri Krishna, and he ultimately transmitted it to the inquiring Narada Muni, who was his disciple. And Narada Muni, because Narada Muni had thought Brahma was the absolute truth or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but saw that he was praying to someone else. So, in this case, the atheist would have been like, oh, of course, see, that's what it is. There is no absolute truth. You just keep going and going and going, and there's no actual ultimate controller, right? So, but Brahma, not being offended by this, he said, yes, well, was able to give the absolute truth as it had been given to him by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One may argue that Brahma, being the original living being, could not be inspired because there was no other being living at that time. Herein it is stated that the Supreme Lord inspired the second creator, Brahma, in order that Brahma could carry out his creative functions. So the supreme intelligence behind all creations is the absolute Godhead, Sri Krishna. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Sri Krishna states that it is he only who superintends the creative energy, Prakriti, which constitutes the totality of matter. Therefore, Sri Vyasadeva does not worship Brahma, but the Supreme Lord, who guides Brahma in his creative activities, as a spiritual master should. In this shloka, the particular words Abhijanaha and Svarlat are significant. These two words distinguish the Supreme Lord from all other living entities. No other living entity is either Abhijanaha or Svarlat. That is, no one is either fully cognizant or fully independent. Even Brahman has to meditate upon the Supreme Lord in order to create. Lord Brahma, who has four heads, and in some universes millions of heads, depending on the dimensions of the universe, the depth and complexities of the universe, is able to meditate in so many different dimensions and create this creative universe, but only because he learned it from his spiritual master, Sri Krishna. So he is not fully cognizant. He's not fully, even though he's very, very, very elevated. To be a Lord Brahma, you have to be, I don't know if you have to be a pure devotee, but you have to be, I think it's a pure devotee, almost a pure devotee, but just a slight desire to be able to be a controller, right? So Lord Brahma, that is a post of a living entity who has taken that role. So Brahma is not really a personality. The personality is in the post of Lord Brahma, because there are multiple millions and trillions and infinite numbers of Lord Brahmas, and they're all posts of different universes. So it's kind of like, right? What is that? Yeah, mind blow. Yeah, we could get real deep in this. This is if you want to get like, whoa, man, this is definitely that kind of thing. So the supreme intelligence behind all creations is the absolute Godhead, Sri Krishna. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Sri Krishna states that it is he only who superintends the creative energy, Prakriti, which constitutes the totality of matter. Therefore, Sri Vyasadeva does not worship Brahma, but the Supreme Lord, who guides Brahma in his creative activities. In this shloka, the particular words abhijanana. Okay, I read all that. Then what to speak of great scientists, like say, so even Brahma has to meditate upon the Supreme Lord in order to create. Then what to speak of great scientists like Einstein? The brains of such a scientist are certainly not the products of any human being. Scientists cannot manufacture such a brain. And what to speak of the foolish atheists who defy the authority of the Lord? So apparently they have Einstein's brain, it was like, but there had to be the living entity present within such a facility as that brain. And the brain was not created by Einstein. It was not created really by anybody other than the Supreme Lord and Lord Brahma. And his karmic reaction was that he came into this existence looking like a walrus, but he had this incredible facility that Oppenheimer used to create an atomic bomb and launch us into a near destructive path of nuclear war. Yes. Thank you, Einstein. I think Einstein was kind of he was like just shocked by the fact that his information got taken like that. Such impersonalists, even the Mayavadi impersonalists who flatter themselves that they can become one with the Lord, are neither Abhijana nor Shavarat. Such impersonalists undergo severe austerities to acquire knowledge to become one with the Lord, but ultimately they become dependent on some rich disciple who supplies them with money to build monasteries and temples. Atheists like Ravana or Hiranyakashipu had to undergo severe penances before they could flout the authority of the Lord. So yeah, Ravana, I think, was worshiping Lord Shiva, or he fought with Lord Shiva, and Hiranyakashipu meditated and created this, fire coming from his head and disturbances, and ultimately the whole anthill had eaten all the flesh off of his body, so it was just bones, and he was keeping it alive by, talk about penances. That's some pretty serious penances. Lord Brahma's like, whoa, okay, I'll come and, please just stop doing what you're doing while your flesh is eaten. Let me renew your body and give you a boon, So it's like demons. They just want to have like mystic powers, and they don't like do any kind of penances to have love for God. Foolish. But ultimately they were rendered helpless and could not save themselves when the Lord appeared before them as cruel death. No, even with all the power and all the austerities and everything that they did, they were still killed by the Supreme Lord. One as a form of Lord Nrsingadev, and the other one as Lord Ramachandra. And this is also the case with modern atheists who also dare to flout the authority of the Lord. Such atheists will be dealt with similarly, for history repeats itself. Whenever men neglect the authority of the Lord, nature and her laws are there to penalize them. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita in the well-known verse Yada Yada Hi Dharmasya Glanihi. Whenever there is a decline in Dharma and a rise in Adharma, O Arjuna, then I incarnate myself. So that's Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, verse 7. And we're in Kali Yuga, so you can see there's a rise of irreligion, people flouting atheism and mocking religious people all over the world, and engaging in more hedonistic lifestyles and sort of humanistic socialism and whatnot. That the Supreme Lord is all perfect is confirmed in all Shruti mantras. It is said that in the Shruti mantras that the all-perfect Lord threw a glance over matter and thus created all living beings. The living beings are part and parcels of the Lord, and he impregnates the vast material creation with seeds of spiritual sparks, and thus gives the creative energies. Thus the creative energies are set into motion to enact so many wonderful creations. I mean, it's pretty amazing, actually, the kind of different forms that we take on. An atheist may argue that God is no more expert than a watchmaker. But of course, God is greater because he can create machines in duplicate male and female forms. The male and female forms of different types of machineries go on producing innumerable machines, similar machines, without God's further attention. So that's a whole nother thing you can discourse about, this whole transgenderism and whatnot. It's that Krishna has given Lord Brahma the means to create a very smooth running and to a degree, but we just fuck it up. We have to go outside of the norm, as Srila Prabhupada would say. It's like certain things, certain activities are like parallel railroad tracks to the way you're on the wrong railroad track, because you're like, oh, I don't want to do it this way. That's just, I have these kinds of desires, and so therefore I'm going to do this other side of the track. And that's legitimate because I have those desires and I have those feelings. And I feel like I could be happy in another body, which is really not true at all. Actually, you're not even completely happy trying to live for yourself and yourself only, even in your own sex and your own, sexuality and whatnot. So, but, why confuse it even more? You're given a particular karmic reaction. If you have the true knowledge of spiritual knowledge, you'll know what to do with that body. But if you're trying to waste your time changing body parts and, wearing dresses or, wearing pants, whatever, next will be like skin pigment transplants. So there's already people out there that try to change their race too. So as Kali Yuga goes, we just keep going further and further down the toilet. Anyway, that's a whole nother thing. Probably get banned on YouTube for saying things like that. The male and female forms of different types of machineries go on producing innumerable similar machines without God's further attention. If a man could manufacture such a set of machines that could produce other machines without his attention, then he could approach the intelligence of God. But that is not possible, for each machine has to be handled individually. Therefore, no one can create as well as God. Another name for God is Ashamurdava, which means that no one is equal to or greater than him. So like God is great, right? Param Satyama, the supreme truth, is he who has no equal or superior. This is confirmed in the Shruti mantras. It is said that before the creation of the material universe, there existed the Lord only, who is the master of everyone. That Lord instructed Brahma in Vedic knowledge. That Lord has to be obeyed in all respects. Anyone who wants to get rid of the material entanglement must surrender unto him. This is also confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. chapter 18, verse 66, I believe. Unless one surrenders unto the lotus feet of the Lord, Supreme Lord, it is certain that he will be bewildered. When an intelligent man surrenders unto the lotus feet of Krishna and knows completely that Krishna is the cause of all causes, is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, then only can such an intelligent man become a Mahatma or great soul. This is very reflective of what we've been talking about in the Bhagavad Gita. I'm just trying. I had a train of thought, right? No, anyway, I lost that. Lost that train of thought. That's how my mind goes, right? But yeah, anyone who wants to get rid of the material entanglement must surrender unto him. So this is what we've said, Bhagavad Gita 18:66. Unless one surrenders unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, it is certain that he will be bewildered. So, as it said, you have material and you have spiritual energy. The living entity is marginal. It's marginal. It can be under the influence of Krishna or under the influence of Maya Devi. There is no middle ground. If you don't want to surrender to Krishna, you will indirectly surrender to Krishna through Maya Devi. Either way, you will be influenced in a certain way. You want to be influenced under Krishna directly, because that is the absolute truth and that is the light, that is life. Thinking that you're the body, that's actually very painful, and Maya Devi puts you through a ringer life after life, as long as you try to do that. But when someone has intelligence, right, and they surrender to Krishna and they know, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be, at the feet of Lord Sri Krishna, and you are happy there because that is your natural state, and that is a great soul because they are Mahatma. They are in knowledge, true knowledge. Such a great soul is rarely seen. Only the Mahatmas can understand that the Supreme Lord is the primeval cause of all creations. He is Parama, or ultimate truth, because all other truths are relative to him. He is omniscient. For him, there is no illusion. So Krishna is not under the influence of his energies. Some Mayavadi scholars argue that Srimad Bhagavatam was not compiled by Srila Vyasadeva. And some of them suggest that this book was a modern creation written by somebody named Vopadev. I've seen that before, which is not really true. In order to refute such meaningless arguments, Sri Sridhara Swami points out that there is reference in the Bhagavatam in many of the oldest Puranas. This first shloka of Bhagavatam begins with the Gayatri mantra. There is reference to this in the Matsya Purana, which is the oldest Purana. In that Purana, it is said, with reference to the Gayatri mantra in the Bhagavatam, that there are many narrations of spiritual instructions beginning with the Gayatri mantra. And there is the history of Vritrashura. Anyone who makes a gift of this great work on a full moon day, I think we're waning a little bit. It was full because we had Nityananda's appearance day, but the moon's been relatively full, so cool. Attains the highest perfection of life by returning to Godhead. There is reference to the Bhagavatam in other Puranas also, where it is clearly stated that this work was finished in 12 cantos, which includes 18,000 shlokas. Yes, this is true. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada was able to only translate up to 10 past Krishna's pastimes, and I think his disciples finished the other two. In the Padma Purana, there is reference. We won't be reading those two, just the ones that Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada translated and purported upon, which includes 18,000. Okay, in the Padma Purana also there is reference to the Bhagavatam in a conversation between Gautama and Maharaj Ambarisha. The king was advised therein to read regularly Srimad Bhagavatam if he desires liberation from material bondage. Under the circumstances, there is no doubt about the authority of the Bhagavatam. Within the past 500 years, many erudite scholars and acharyas, like Jiva Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, Vishvanatha Chakravarti, Vallabhavacharya, and many other distinguished scholars, even after the time of Lord Chaitanya, made elaborate commentaries on the Bhagavatam. and the serious student would do well to attempt to go through them to better relish the transcendental messages. Who has time for who has time to look beyond social media or just read nonsense books or read the news or whatever? There's so much scripture and so many lectures to hear from your spiritual masters. Like, you need a few lifetimes to get through all these. Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur specifically deals with the original and pure psychology, Adi Rasa, devoid of all mundane inebriety. The whole material creation is moving under the principle of sex life. In modern civilization, sex life is the focal point for all activities. Wherever one turns his face, he sees sex life predominant. That's true. Even more so now in Kali Yuga, in the modern world. Everything is about sex, Sex. It gets more and more graphic. Therefore, sex life is not unreal. Its reality is experienced in the spiritual world. The material sex life is but a perverted reflection of the original fact. The original fact is in the absolute truth, and thus the absolute truth cannot be impersonal. It is not possible to be impersonal and contain pure sex life. Consequently, the impersonalist philosophers have given indirect impetus to the abominable mundane sex life because they have overstressed the impersonality of the ultimate truth. So, in misreading things, impersonalists, and a lot of times because of their tendency to be offensive and deny the existence of Krishna, they will fall down and engage and use sex as a lot of these people are like sleeping with these sort of so-called gurus, Ram Das, and what was the other guy's name, Osha. These guys were all like sleeping with their disciples or telling people just to sleep with each other. And and people they're like, ooh, that's spiritual. It's groovy, it's spiritual. That's what they're looking for. So, they get what they want. Consequently, man without information of the actual spiritual form of sex has accepted perverted material sex life as the all in all. There is a distinction between sex life in the diseased material condition and spiritual sex life. This Srimad Bhagavatam will gradually elevate the unbiased reader to the highest perfectional stage of transcendence. It will enable him to transcend the three modes of material nature, fruit of action, speculative philosophy, and worship of functional deities as inculcated in Vedic verses. Wow, that's an amazing purport and amazing verse. Great one to study, to look through, and just to meditate upon. I think we're going to stop there at the first text, and we will continue along these first couple texts. The purports are rather long, but we'll get to text 2 next time. Okay, namaste.